I thought you were on. I was about to sit and just, like, be a nuisance to you.
Now, can I just make a request? It suddenly occurred to me that before this podcast started, that all these things are still blinking away, that Mike Tucker and I were having a really confidential conversation, and you will have recorded it. Can I ask you,
It will be cut, Nick. It will be cut. It won't be podcast.
We learnt our lesson after Davros the other year.
Davros.
Yes, Davros.
Yeah, we were over there. You will have heard of that. So please don't.
Can I sit with you?
Or if you do, don't attribute it to me.
Just Nick who?
Make it sound like a Dalek.
Yeah.
They won't guess.
They'll
It's
never know.
It's like an old BBC thing, isn't it? When you'd forget sometimes, and you'd be standing on the floor and you'd say something and you suddenly think, that's just gone everywhere.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I used to shock David Tennant when I, because doing the Dalek voices, I had a feed of everyone else's mic,
Yeah.
and they tend to radio mic everyone now as well as have a boom there. So unless I have a very, we went through a period where there was a sound engineer who would look at me and go and turn the things out so that you can't listen to them. But the guy we've had for a few years now, he just leaves everything up, you know. But and certainly at this particular recording, it was Daleks in Manhattan, and.
Like with a New York accent.
And they were
Yeah, the exterminate. I just love that idea.
But David was having a conversation with the other members of the cast completely, well, you know, about 400 yards away from me, in between takes. And I honestly can't remember the actress in question, about whether a certain actress was alive or dead.
How can you tell?
And they were saying, I don't know, is she, I don't know, what was she? And they were like taking votes, you see. And then when that particular bit was over, I wandered over to him and I said, I think she's alive. He went, what? And I said, I'm listening to everything you're saying. He's like, oh my God, you know, so a weird prospect of the Dalek man.
It does happen though, doesn't it, waking up with certain actors, are they still with us or not? And I find about every 3 days I go through this thing of now, and you're talking about certain things, wait a minute, are they still with us?
Yeah.
Just think people are talking about us like that.
I know.
Is she still alive?
Well, I sometimes think that when I'm directing people in the studio.
He said, looking straight at me.
Is she still alive?
My God, how does she do it? It's amazing, really.
You do sometimes have that thing where Toby in the studio will sometimes do something erroneously, technically, and as the director, you're talking away, and the actors actually can't hear you. He's pressed a button or something, and you're talking away, and the actors are sort of in the booth, and you can't hear them, and maybe one of the other actors is talking, and they're nodding, and so you're talking to them, and they seem to be listening. You go, okay, right, well, let's go for that then, and cue, and then nothing happens, and cue. Is the matter with these people? And then Toby goes, oh, God, I said, sorry, I've been talking to you all for 15 minutes and you didn't hear
That's right, and
anything.
then one person, usually me, says, what page are we on? Right? And he said, well, I've just told, I said, no, you didn't, it was just quiet in here.
Mind you do assure me that you've got the pages inside.
I have a page from, I have number blindness. I have a lot of blindness, but numbers are specifically, which is why when I wrote, I didn't bother with numbers, darling, it's not necessary. You know, go whatever order you want to go, and that's as right or I am.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I'll talk to you about that later. Anyway, that's another conversation I need to have with you. But I worked out this incredible, because I thought, I cannot be defeated by this, because when you're doing these big scripts that we're doing, you're going to be doing things out of order, so you have to put X amount of pages there and X amount, and then you do 3 pages in the middle there, which for everybody else seems to be perfectly normal. For me, it is a nightmare. It actually causes me to hyperventilate quietly. And so I thought, I'm not going to be beaten by this. You know, this is not it. Because I get away with it sometimes. Anyway, I don't know why, it's whenever I'm with you, it becomes a major disaster. And I thought, I'm not going to let this happen. And I have worked out this, I sat up at night trying to work out how I could do this. I had scripts on the floor, working out. I know truly, when I do something, I work it.
I know.
And I have finally worked out it, and it involves lots of bits of coloured paper. That's all I'm prepared to share with you till we meet again.
Paige's thing I've discovered, being 54, 55 at the end of this month, it happens at the age of 50, I've discovered, because for any criticism I give you, I'm exactly the same now when I'm behind the
Because I've
microphone.
never been able to do it, and I'm 70 now, so I figure it's time to change. In October,
By the way,
the 14th. Just write it down in your diaries. All gifts gratefully received, thank you. Send them to the home. Matron will make sure I get them.
perhaps you'd like to introduce
My name's Simon, I'm on the Blue Box podcast for Starburst magazine, and when I asked...
It's my fault.
I'm so sorry, darling. You should have
I
said
was
something.
offered the panels and I said, which ones are free? And I saw this one, I thought, oh yes, brilliant. And they said, yeah, it's fine. Then I realised, yeah, it's because the panel runs itself.
Exactly.
So I'll see you later.
You haven't said anything.
But you're on my peripheries. If you're on the side of me, you don't exist. You have to come up and look at me and let me know
I
that you're
exist on
there.
a quantum level.
I know you're not.
Let's not go there. Firstly, well, I think everyone knows who you are, but if you give a brief introduction from
Yes.
each of you, please.
That was mine. I'm there was in that Are You Being Served remake, I thought there was a brilliant joke in there when he
Was
said,
there?
yeah, there was. He
There
said,
was.
yeah, I quite liked it anyway. I hated the original, so I quite liked
So
it.
did I.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just going to say, isn't it awful? It's blasphemy, isn't it?
I know, but I hate it.
I
thought it was
can't
rubbish.
stand
But
all that.
That's why I liked the remake, because anything would be better. There was a brilliant joke where the guy said, he said, have you had any experience in gentleman's retail? And he said, well, do you want the long answer or the short answer? He
yes.
said, just the short answer. He said, I have. And he went, oh, well, that's brilliant. Blah, 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 blah. By the way, what was the long answer? I have not had it.
Yes.
I thought that's a really good joke.
If I'd stayed for that bit, I would have been all
It
right.
gets better as it goes along. And John
No,
Chase
no,
is
I did
brilliant.
watch some of it, but I just find it all very difficult. I think classics of that nature are
That will do what you want to.
still there. Sorry, answer. That was
Hello, I'm Nick Briggs. I am co-executive producer of Big Finish Productions and the voice of the Daleks and other monsters.
Thank
I'm trying to remember.
you. Who are you today?
Q.
I don't know. Who do I want to be today?
Be who you like, we don't mind.
I'd like to
Don't let
be-
the monsters out.
I want to be Florence Naismith. That's who I'm going to be today for at least 3 minutes. And when I'm fed up with being Florence, because she's an absolute pain in the bottom, this woman, I'm going to be Katy Manning. But I don't quite know who she is.
Joe.
Joe? Is that you, Joe? So occasionally I'll be the doctor. And they up Chuck and all that and last the girls with it. I don't know really who I am. But actually I'm Katy Manning and I'm very thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Have you finished?
Do you need to lie down now and
I
about you?
do, yes.
And I'm Richard Brignell. I edit Nothing at the End of the Lane. Written for Doctor Who magazine and did an awful lot of work on the DVD range when it was still going. So now sadly defunct.
Did you do some of the texts? At the
I
bottom?
did production subtitles, I did research.
I love
did-
those. I love the subtitles.
Oh, what a stint to write those.
Are they really?
Yeah.
That must be like working for CFAX.
Um,
Remember CFAX?
It was honestly one of those jobs that you think would be easy, and it's a nightmare.
No, I wouldn't have thought it would be easy at all.
And Andrew's not in today. He was here earlier on. Andrew Pixley, who we all know and love from doing the archives, did one, Delta and the Bannermen, and said, not doing that again, because he found it impossible to do. You are writing to time codes, so you are writing to 24ths of a second. You have to fit everything in, and you're given stories that you sometimes go, no, please.
But you can find stuff out, you can research stuff
But
yourself.
boy, you can find stuff out. Yeah, and that's the really fascinating bit. you go along and you're able to dig stuff out that, you know, the very first one I did was the War Machines. So you go along to the BBC's Written Archive Centre, have a look through the production paperwork if it exists. And there's a letter in there from a mum of a young boy who was invited along to Lime Grove Studios at the time to watch the filming for a day. And I managed to track him down. He's now a doctor himself. But yeah, I had some really lovely memories of just sort of being there and William Hartnell feeding him McVitie's fruitcake in the restaurant, and you know, but you're able to dig out lots of really interesting little bits of information. And it was nice actually that I don't know if anyone's seen, but there's a website called Dalek 6388.
Oh yes,
And it logs all things Dalek. And a few weeks ago, someone wrote to them, and they own the model that Shawcraft made the 1 foot model of the Dalek that was used in the end of the first episode of The Chase, where it comes up through the sand, comes up through the sand dune. And there's pictures of it on their website. You can go and have a look. And you know, that's one of the things that I was trying to research when I did the subtitles for The Chase, because in the frame many years ago, 25 years ago or so,
that was a fanzine.
Yeah, the fanzine. Yeah, Ray Cusick did an interview, and he happened to mention, I was in the toy museum in Brighton one day, and I saw this thing sitting there in an exhibition. And of course, we tried to find it then. It turned out it wasn't quite a toy museum; it was a doll museum. There is a toy museum in Brighton, but that came along later, which sort of rather confused things. But it's turned up now, and it's a gorgeous model, absolutely gorgeous
Wow.
model.
So it's like a detective story in a way, finding out all this stuff.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
So I imagine you have obvious entry points. You have, well, obviously War Machines, Post Office Tower. Oh, let's look up some stuff on Post Office Tower and see what relates to it.
Yeah, I was saying earlier on when I was talking with David Howe, you know, when you go to research anything, you go down the obvious routes first of all. So you go to all your primary research material and interviews that people have done in the past, and you look through all that, and then you start having to go off tangentially, you know, and start thinking laterally about things.
I love that
and,
word, tangent.
yeah, and you go down finding other routes and exploring other routes, you know, and there's lovely little bits and pieces that you can pick out. I was doing one of the last ones I did was for the Green Death, for the reissue of that, and we got to the bit where they're all sitting around having the dinner party, and there's a line. Hello, yes, you remember the Green Death?
No. That's a short answer.
And they're all sitting around having the dinner party, and there's a line about someone Jessie tootling along on her flute.
Yes.
And I can't for the life of me remember her name, but I thought, oh, I wonder if she's still around. And I'm literally sitting there writing it, looked her up on the internet, found her, got in contact with her that morning, and she regaled me with all these stories coming back that she'd been in the East Tower of the BBC, and Barry Letts had happened to be wandering around, and she was just doing something because she'd been on top of the pops or something.
Tootling her flute.
Tootling her flute. Barry had seen her, got her in because she thought she'd be good for the background, and she remembered. I can't remember if she said she did it or if you did it, Katy. But they had a fish tank, full of real maggots in the studio for when they're doing the model work, and someone knocked them over. So they went everywhere, but of course they couldn't gather them all up. So subsequently, they turn into flies, and there's flies all over the studio. So, yeah, but it's.
I wasn't knocking. They weren't knocked out. I was setting them free.
Liberation for flies.
Sorry, but I thought this was, you know, it was terrible to see them all so overcrowded.
Sure, I can't believe how the time is flying along. I'm going to get one question in, and then I'll open up to everyone else.
Yep.
But what I was going to ask is,
The question is, will you shut up?
Yeah. We recently did a podcast which is a discussion about being a fan. And we found the most interesting things defining that point where you stop just liking something like Doctor Who and then actually becoming what someone might call a fan. So,
yeah.
is there a point you remember thinking, oh, do you know, I'm a
I
fan?
have to say, I'm not a fan.
No, I
as
can
such.
imagine.
You know, I mean, I grew up with a lot of wonderful television, and one of the most amazing things that I grew up that was like, wow, loving this, was indeed, you know, the very early days, in fact, the beginning of Doctor Who.
I mean, were you a fan of anything particular? Is there something you would call yourself a fan?
I think fandom goes one step beyond where I go. I have massive admiration. I love watching different actors. I loved it when special effects, you know, and things like Doctor Who and Quatermass and all that kind of stuff. And so it's very hard because I'm not a fan, but I mean, like, I watch all the new Doctor Who stuff and I absolutely love it. But what I do love is I love fans, because I love whatever it is that has brought them into this situation, and everybody has the most amazing story to go with it. And it just makes me so happy. I think it's always very obvious that I just love being at these things because I love the fans. I love who they are. I love what it is that they've found.
For me, I think the point of where I felt...
I'm a fan of yours.
Thanks, my darling.
And
I'm
yours.
a huge fan of yours.
I'm a huge fan of both.
No, I'm a huge...
No, I'm joking.
That's my
You'll never be bigger than me.
I'm working on it. Sorry.
That point where, for me, I think as a youngster, where it tipped over from just liking it, because, you know, I liked Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Tarzan, you know, Thunderbird,
Bilbo.
all those things I really loved, had toys,
Yeah.
but I could miss them.
Yeah.
Yes.
But with Doctor Who, of course, you, as we oldsters always say, you couldn't record it in those days, except maybe if you put a tape recorder beside the
And you had
television.
to
which I
wait a
did.
week, which was exciting.
So my experience of thinking, oh, you know, I really do love this program, is when, because my parents, you know, were constantly trying to break me of Doctor Who. You know, they thought it's
Doing
just
Doctor Who rehab.
even now my mum is a bit sort of, she's saying, oh, and I say, oh, I'm doing something on whatever day. She goes, oh, what is it? And I go, Doctor Who, and she goes, oh, okay. Yeah. And if I say, oh, I'm recording an episode of Dan Dead, she goes, oh, that sounds very exciting, because it's not Doctor Bloody Who, as it was called in our household. Doctor Bloody Who. The Return of the Bloody Daleks, my brother used to say. Oh, what's it called this week? The return, you know, and it was all that. But so they used to sort of take me out for the day on a Saturday, and then not, you know, I was thinking we won't get home in time, and I used to get into such a state that they'd just take me, you know, and from then on they knew they just couldn't, because it would upset me so much not to see Doctor Who. And that's when I realised, I think, that I'm a Doctor Who fan. It means so much to me that I cannot miss it. And even now, I don't always watch Doctor Who when it goes out live now, but when it's going out and I'm not watching it, I'm a bit sort of,
But it's better
a bit like an
watching it
alcoholic who
live.
hears the pub opening next to him. Could do with a pint now, you know, I could do
But
with a
don't
bit
you
of
find it's
Doctor Who.
better live? You know, that when I say live, when it actually goes out rather
Yes,
than...
but it's quite often it's not possible.
You know, assume the position, I always say, at that particular time. Just one little thing I say before. I understand you so much more now. Was that I had the problem that my father was on radio when Doctor Who was being shown, so there was a huge thing in our house of whether the telly was louder or Daddy on the radio. You know, what can I so that wasn't easy. Sport 1, I'm afraid. And there was me trying to watch Doctor Who.
Well, we had problems when my father suddenly decided he liked that series Kung Fu. Remember that?
Oh, with Keith Carradine.
Yeah. Some Carradine. Was it Keith Carradine?
Yeah, I think it was.
David.
Carradine.
It was David.
It was
David
David.
Carradine,
They used
that's
to-
it.
I was close, that was his father.
It was his brother.
Well, ITV decided to try and beat Doctor Who with it. Needless to
No,
say,
did
needless to say, they didn't. But you know, so we had to buy a portable television, which in those days having 2 televisions
Oh,
in the
yeah.
household, especially we were not a rich family. You know, I had to. So it was upstairs. Also, during the power cuts, you know, of the 70s. We had the portable television wired up to a battery upstairs, a car battery,
Yeah.
just in case the power went. So it would be be up there ready, so I'd dash up and turn the. Yeah. Anyway, you.
Oh, for me, for me the turning point was between, in 1975, between Seeds of Doom episode 6 and Maskman and Dragger episode 1, because it was then that I got the very first Doctor Who monster book that Terence Dix did. And I vividly remember the large, I don't know if you remember, that it had a large photograph of Davros in it, Davros's head, which gave me nightmares. And I know that's when it tipped me over to being the fan, because Maskman and Dragger 1 was the first time I bought a copy of the Radio Times purely so that I could cut out the cast.
Oh yeah, we've all been.
And once that happened, there really was no going back.
Well, let me just say, by the way, going before the whole missing it thing, I remember watching the last episode of Patrick Troughton's Doctor Who, the last episode of that. And of course, I was very young. I would have been 8 or 9 or something like that. And I had and there was no advanced publicity that I was aware of. And I watched it not knowing how it was going to end. And when it ended like that, with Patrick Troughton spinning off into the distance, and his friends never knowing who he was, really, never having had event, they blotted out their memories and sent them back, I'm explaining for you,
No, I saw it.
Well, because I know everyone else in the room knows what I'm
No, I did actually see it.
Oh, bless you. I just looked at the television, and my mum came in and said, "What's the matter with you?" And I said, I think Doctor Who's just died. It ripped my heart out, And I think then I think my mum thought, God, he's serious about this. It's ridiculous, isn't it? I'm slightly tearful to remember it. Yeah.
But
And it's just some 25 minutes load of nonsense with, monsters lumbering around in silly costumes, and yet you invest so much in it. And I don't know, I can't explain it to anyone why we get like this about Doctor Who. And I suppose the older you get, and the more it reminds you of simpler times when life seemed.
Exactly, that's what I
The
think.
nostalgia for it, for me, is immense. Particularly, I've been watching a lot of your stuff recently, not just because I'm writing for you, but because I love it, and my son particularly loves it. Loves watching the Sea Devils and Planet of the Daleks.
I thought it sort of, there was something so comforting about Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I mean, this is spoken to somebody that watched it, not somebody that was this sort of massive fan. But I always found it, and also because it opened doors to me in terms of creativity, if you know what I mean, which I hadn't been exposed to before on television. And I found that really lovely. Of course, doing it, was, especially in that time when it wasn't what it is now. There was something so lovely about being involved in this sort of, and it was this incredible, warm, cuddly feeling going to work, and these great stories, and playing a character that actually grew up. It was lovely, not just coming in and doing something, but actually being able to play a character that over time was changing. And, trendy, and, I was kind of considered to be like a really trendy.
It's been said in Doctor Who, was written by Steve, Stephen Moffat. We're all stories. We make stories all the time. We make narratives about everything that happens in our lives, whether it's just how the car broke down, how your favourite thing in the supermarket wasn't in stock, when you went shopping. We all have stories, and Doctor Who, for me, defined my understanding of story, and still does. Which is why when I got an opportunity to write for the Bill, I couldn't. I just thought, this isn't Doctor Who. I'm
The
not
thought
interested.
of writing for Doctor Who and then the bill, I mean, I know who I'd write for.
I think it gives you undoubtedly a sense of fun as well. Which
Sorry.
it's not fun for you, Nick.
Hard work.
We do it because we enjoy it.
Yes.
All of this we do because we enjoy it. Whatever field it is, we do it because we're getting something out of it. It's. I mean, it's a bit of a downer to sort of say what a nasty, horrible, bleak world this can be. But it is, and it really stinks sometimes. So it's lovely to have something that you can latch onto and just.
And make believe, and all you have to do is bring the heart to it. The writers give you the words, the direct, and it's just, thank goodness, you know, that we have this that's gone on from Doctor Who, from where it was to what it is now, and of how it had rescued them,
Yes.
either from a terribly traumatic home life or various illnesses and things like that. And that's why I think it's really important for us to honour and respect the fans, because there's a lot of people there that have, you know, it's been a hugely important thing in their lives, and I think that that's something that we need to really...
Nick, when you did the, I mean, talking as a fan, I mean, can you describe if there was a real sense of vindication doing the lost stories of getting back a piece of Doctor Who history?
Well, funnily enough, to be controversial, wrote that he said that he had it, but he said, oh, I found some more up in the loft. I think you're just writing this now.
I'm sure there must be quite a few that come your way.
Oh,
Oh, I just happened to find this in the sock.
It's a 12-part story, mostly starring me.
It was worth it purely for doing Farewell Great Massacre.
Ah, yeah.
Having
is
the
so
chance to
loved.
finally put that out, it has been a real blessing, I think. Because
And to see a glimpse of Doctor Who from the Silurian plague really upset me as a child and predated you, Medine. But I used to lie in bed at night. It was the scene where Peter Miles came in and was infected by it and going crazy, which is just horrific, isn't it?
How's that what the seeds are doing with the transformation?
Oh, yeah, I could imagine. I was a teenager by then, so nothing was scaring me. But yeah, I used to lie in bed and feel for the...
Sort of thinking, I now understand why people say I used to watch you from behind the sofa, because I can't look. And isn't that lovely that I can still be affected by something like that, you know?
Unfortunately,
I know,
I'm afraid Quad want the Stair Cinema back, please.
Right, okay. We'll bring that to a close.
you've outstayed the cinema.
Let's suddenly get a film projected in our place.
And we'll still be going.
Thank you.